All right, part four is how to communicate your vision. So let's talk about how do you express you have a vision, you're clear on it. How do you express that to women without coming off like you're bragging or being an asshole?
An example that really comes to mind, Vin, and that's a really good question, is a friend of mine who lives in Sydney, and he's one of the most alpha guys I've ever met. He runs a nightclub and a martial arts studio. He's a really inspirational, amazing guy. And I remember once he picked up a girl from a nightclub for a one night stand, and he had martial arts training at 6 in the morning. And you know what he did? He put her in a cab or a car, I can't remember, at 5:30 in the morning, and then went to martial arts training at 6. He did not put his vision aside for some girl he just met who was very attractive. And I really, that summed him up as how important his vision was to him, was way more important than any girl he just met. And that really communicated to her how much self-discipline he had and how he really stayed true to himself and what was important to him.
Right. She's gonna see him as a pillar of strength, and guaranteed she'd see him again.
Right.
It's really important.
Compare him to every other guy she met, at the bar or wherever, who wasn't even close in terms of that
Right.
amount of focus.
And it's not something she's gonna take personally either, because it's not like he's kicking her out because he doesn't like her. It gives him a legitimate excuse to be unavailable. Even nowadays, when just running the business and stuff, it gives me a legitimate excuse to be unavailable, where I can't see a girl, but she can't get mad at me because I'm doing something that's related to my vision, something I'm passionate about, and it's work. And in the past, if you didn't want to see a girl and you didn't have a good reason, then she would take that as an insult, and that could really hurt you.
Right. I can think of two examples where one example where just a tiny bit of vision had an incredible effect on a woman. This was before I knew all this stuff. This was before I even had met Vin or anything. And I was really into music, and I wanted to be like, a music producer. And I had this idea. I was still in my early years of college. I had this idea I was going to make an album. And I was telling this girl that was kind of just, we had just started dating, and I told her about it, and she got so into this. She made an album cover for me. She'd always ask me how it was going. She'd want to hear the music I was making and stuff. And this girl was so devoted to me. I mean, and specifically in terms of sex, like, she was totally open to me anytime, anywhere. She would sit there, and mind you, I lived at my dad's house, and this was in his basement, and I'm working on music with my little, crappy little setup. And this girl was hot. And just the fact that I was so into it and so passionate about it, and I had this goal of making an album by the end of that summer, she was all over it. And that made her so interested in me, so devoted to me. And she was chasing me for sex. She would initiate. On the flip side, a few months, well, it was a little bit longer, a little while later in my life, I was coming towards the end of college, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. This was also before I met Vin, and I got a great opportunity to do this job. I had no idea. Every job I thought about, doing, I started to get really scared because it seemed so boring, and I was really worried about graduating. At the time, I was dating a girl who was in law school, and she had a very strong vision. She wanted to be a lawyer. And I could tell as kind of the days went on that we were seeing each other, she was getting more and more urgent. Like, she was bringing it up. She was dropping hints about, so what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Where are you going in life? And she would make little jokes about, I'm not sure I can be with a guy who doesn't have any goals or anything. And I would play it off. I knew a little bit about, pickup and stuff. So I treat it as a test, like, oh, she's testing me. And I would just be cocky about it, or, blow it off. But after a while, it became a real issue. And I think that was the main reason why she started starting fights with me and started getting real snappy with me and just being very hostile. And it's because she didn't trust me. She didn't feel, attracted to me. She didn't feel like she was with the guy who was going anywhere. And I think it got to her. And ultimately, we broke up on pretty bad terms just because we were fighting all the time.
that brings up an important point. That game and being able to manipulate power by using game is a temporary solution. Mm-hmm. You can win the argument, but in the long term, you're going to have fights, arguments, you're going to drift apart. Whereas vision is a permanent solution.
Right.
Like if you think about the guys that get women who've never studied pickup or never studied game, it's guys with vision.
And it's effortless for them. It's not like they're thinking of, okay, what's this technique? What am I going to say next?
Yeah.
They're just being them.
Right.
And I try to tell guys this, that real natural game is not different from you. You have some kinds of game where it's all technique and you're kind of faking, but natural game is not different from you. It's not like you put on a mask or you do something different. You're just being you, and women are massively attracted to you because of that.
One thing that Vin said to me that really stood out was every other guy out there tries to impress girls by telling them about their vision, whereas the guys who really know what they're doing, they demonstrate it. She sees them actively involved in it. And one thing that comes to mind was that I went through a phase where I really picked up a lot of girls, and in my bedroom, I had my written goals up. I had a big vision board. In fact, I had 2 vision boards. And when girls had come in my room, the first thing they noticed was these goals up in the wall. And they all loved it. It was unbelievable that when they read them and saw that I was very open with my goals and I had some really crazy stuff up there and my vision board had attractive girls on it and all kinds of stuff, I could notice that their reaction was one of that they were truly attracted. They really liked it. A guy who was so clear. I had my goals. I even had dates on them. I even had one of my goals was having an amazing girlfriend. And I was really in that process demonstrating my vision, and women just really loved it.
I think it's a rare experience for guys to, see that response in a woman where she is really fucking impressed by you. Like, there's something changes in her face, the way she looks, her body, the way she reacts to you from that point on. After you've done something, you've demonstrated something, there's a major shift, and it's very hard to explain if you haven't experienced it, but I've seen this many times with women. And if you can imagine, guys are always trying to get women to get in their bedroom or come home with them or get them in isolation. What if your reason to get a woman back to your place was you wanted to show her these really cool sketches or play her this really cool song or show her this thing you were working on? And it wasn't a gimmick. You really wanted to do that. Imagine you get a woman into your bedroom and you're showing her something and you're all into it, and then you look at her and you realize you've been talking and so interested in your thing, and you look at her and she wasn't even paying attention to the thing. She was just looking at you the whole time, and she has these big puppy dog eyes and she is ready to go. And that's something only a rare few guys ever experience in their lives.
And that's really true. I noticed that, since I've moved here, like I have a pretty cool view. I have a pretty amazing view of New York City. And when I bring women here and they see the view, they're impressed by it, but they're nowhere near as impressed or attracted as when I show them a painting that I made. I have this painting that I painted probably 5 or 6 years, actually more than that, probably 8 years ago, it's actually of my cat and dog. And showing them the view is one thing, but showing them the painting is something completely different. And you can tell that they like the view, but they really, really become more attracted and turned on once I show them the painting.
Because you did the painting.
Right.
I think that, even if you were talking about this view, let's say you were standing there looking at this view, and it is an amazing view, standing there and as you and she are looking out, telling her about what it took to get this place. Yeah. And what this view reminds you of. When I look at this view, I think of all the hard work I think of how I've achieved so many of my goals. And then I also see, this skyline, and I think about how much I still am yet to do, how many goals I still have. And this skyline reminds me of that. I think if you looked over at that woman, she wouldn't be looking at the skyline. She'd be looking up at you like, wow.
Right. That's a good point.
I think that one example of vision stands out to me was when I read Donald Trump's book, one of his first books, and he'd say that he'd just walk around Manhattan looking at property and imagining building buildings and owning property. And I can only imagine if he had girls with him at that time, he would have been walking around with this vision of building buildings and owning property. How much different that would be walking around with just a normal guy who was maybe trying to impress her or trying to find things to talk about. When a woman would have walked around with Donald Trump at that stage, I reckon she would have just been overwhelmed by his vision and the fact that he was 24 hours a day looking for opportunities and really living that vision, even if he was just walking down the street.
That's a good point. All right, part 5 is how to get her involved in your vision. Not only communicate to her, but how to get her involved in it. One of the obstacles, and we have a number of obstacles, but one of them is being ashamed of your vision, being ashamed or trying to hide it. I was in London doing a boot camp probably 5 years ago, and one of my clients was actually a doctor. I think he was a surgeon, something really took a lot of work to get to. And he was talking to girls, and I noticed when they asked him what he did, he almost felt like he had to hide it. And when they asked him what he did for work, he'd say, "I work at Taco Bell." Now, or you know what else he said? He said Taco Bell, and then after they kept asking him, he'd say, "No, I'm a janitor at the hospital."
That's like an old pickup technique or something.
Right. So he would say, "I work at the hospital," and then when they ask what they do, he'd say, "I'm a janitor." And that's fucking lame.
Yeah.
If you are a surgeon and something that you're passionate about, let her know. Don't be ashamed of that. I think what he was trying to do is try to create intrigue and get her to ask him questions. But if you really have her believing that you're a janitor, and there's nothing wrong with being a janitor. I was actually a janitor for most of my early pickup career. And it didn't matter because I had this other vision as a musician. But you don't want to pretend that that's what you do and that's what you're really into. There's no reason to hide it. So if you have something that is aligned with your vision, don't be ashamed of it, and don't try to hide it from women.
I think what that guy was probably trying to do, and this is something you come across, you see in a lot of technique-based stuff, is he was trying to pretend that he didn't care what she thought. It's kind of a status game where, he's trying to say, "Oh, I can say any silly thing because I don't want your approval." And on the one hand, you're showing her that you don't care about her approval, which is attractive, but you can do that and talk about your vision. Most guys, when they talk about, their job or something, they're trying to brag about it. They're talking about it so that the woman will like them. Like, yeah, I'm doing this. They'll take some lame job and they'll try to make it sound really awesome. And then they'll try to talk about how much money they make. Basically, what they're doing is they're begging for the woman's approval, even though they think they're sounding confident. And if you just talk about your vision as something you're passionate about and don't try to put in details or exaggerate it or make it sound like something she'd like, talk about how much you like it. It's like you give yourself approval. You give your goal your approval. You give your vision approval. And her approval isn't important. And in this way, you demonstrate, first of all, your passion, but also you satisfy that requirement of not seeking approval from women that is so integral to attraction.
It kind of reminds me of a girl I met. I did an approach. I met a new girl. She asked me what I did, and I told her how I was into dancing, and it actually turned her off. For some reason, she didn't actually like it. And after that, for a little while, I almost was reluctant to tell guys I was into dancing because of that bad experience. And then I realized that who cares if I'm passionate about it and I love it, why would I ever let one woman put me off telling the world about it? And I realized that it wasn't important that every girl loves your vision. If that's who you are and that's what you love, then you really need to stay true to that. And if there's someone occasionally who doesn't think that's a good idea, well, so be it.
I've found that in a lot of cases, a woman doesn't even necessarily have to like you to feel sexually attracted to you. It's more important that she respects you. I think guys confuse a woman liking them and approving of them they confuse that with that instant, like automatic, primal sexual desire. Like, wow, this is a man. Maybe there's things about you she doesn't like, but she respects you and she feels your power. And that's much more, that's a much bigger factor in making her sexually receptive than just trying to make her like you.
And by getting her involved, what we mean is mentally involved in your vision. There's techniques for actually getting her to contribute to your vision. We're going to talk about those in another section called compliance. But really, you want to get her mentally involved in your vision. So when you talk about it, you have to talk about it in a good way. And that involves, not selling yourself short, not having too small of vision. That involves things like not blowing your vision off. So for example, if your vision is doing something in the Olympics and you're supposed to get up for practice every day at 6 a.m, blowing that off the night before, eating bad food, staying up late playing video games is disrespectful of your vision. And when you're disrespectful of your own vision, that gives her a cue that she can be disrespectful of you. Because if you don't respect what you're doing in life and you don't put energy to it and set boundaries where you always do things for it, then she's going to disrespect you as well, and she's not going to take you seriously. Other obstacles that guys face would be like being indecisive, being ashamed of their vision, or Matt, you were actually mentioning people that have a vision that's extremely focused on achieving things, but it's not really focused on having a vision for themselves. Do you want to expand on that?
Sure. Having external visions are fantastic. Moving to a certain area or owning certain things or doing certain things. But I think ultimately you want to have a vision for how you want to be. Whether it's improving your confidence or learning to speak French or having a more sexy image, you really want to develop a vision for you, for how you want to evolve as a human being, what sort of sides of your personality you want to bring out, what layers you want to strip off, what new skills you want to learn. Because material things can come and go, but if you really build a vision for yourself, no one can take that away from you. You'll have it forever. If you learn a skill or if you develop yourself and really invest in yourself, that is something that you'll always have, and it will always be something that will be able to generate things for you in the future. So when you're setting a vision, certainly don't neglect you.
And also, I think, just on a very material level, buy things and have things around your house that have to do with your vision. If you're into art, buy art supplies and have it out.
Chances are, if a person is into art, they've already got the supplies, but they've got them like tucked away somewhere.
Right. Yeah. Show them to the woman. Make him part of your home. Like, don't hide it. Don't have like the polite stuff out. Leave that stuff out and make it very physically evident. Leave evidence. Show her physical evidence of your vision. I think that's very important.
And one thing that Vin and I do every time I come to New York is we put ourselves in situations that we want to aspire to, whether it's driving ridiculous cars or going and checking out ridiculous apartments. that there's no way in the world we can get near right now, it really provides us with inspiration. And when girls are asking us what we're doing, we're really guys on the rise. We're guys going somewhere. So many people are just so focused on solving their current problems or their current crises that they're not really getting out there and dreaming.
Cool. All right, and the last section I want to talk about, part 6, would be vision and sexual identity. Brian, do you want to talk about that?
You know, for men, when we think about what's sexy, what we find sexy in women, you know, it's typically, you know, her body, like her body shape, body parts, how she physically looks. For women, it's all about a man's personality. And I actually equate, you know, things like a sense of humor or a strong vision with a woman with a great figure. So you can think about a guy who has a great sense of humor. You could think the female equivalent is a woman with, like, you know, great breasts or an amazing figure, a really pretty face. A man with a vision is analogous to his erection. And if you think about sex, how your penis goes out, it's focused out straight, you know, in a very strong direction, just how it looks and how it feels, and you're giving it outward, you're penetrating the woman. A woman is a microcosm for the world, for your life. And so when you have a hard-on for life, when there's something in your life that's really turning you on, and that vision is that thing that turns you on, you have a hard-on for life, and she feels that power. She feels how hard and how strong and how passionate you are about it. So, you know, a perfect analogy is really sex and how you function sexually. The way you move through life is, a woman can feel that. So if you don't have a vision, it's almost like, you know, you got a soft dick.
Right.
That's really what it feels like to the woman. She's like, oh, okay, another limp dick. Who cares?